Okay, hello everyone. It's been a month. Happy March, I guess. So today should be a relatively short meeting. In terms of DevSync, what I've been up to in the past month have been mostly check Hive stuff. I've been battling the PGSQL queries here and there. I have some issues where I cannot reproduce some of the errors that I get on the pipeline when it runs. So I'm looking into that. It's odd because I use the same PostgreSQL version, but somehow it's still different. Apart from that, I pushed some changes for the, rebased the merge request for the new virtual operations that should be done as well. And I guess yesterday we merged a very small change to the documentation for Hive. And yeah, I guess we'll have a talk about this later, but I looked more closely into how the muted behaves on HiveMind, and I'd like to overhaul that a bit. Yeah, that's it for me.
Okay, actually, I had a quick question on that. So when you talked about the difference between continuous integration testing and when you're running them locally, is it a matter of different results from the SQL queries or just different timings, or
it's
failing,
different,
or what's going on?
It's different results, and also I get different things in the SQL execution where, for instance, when I execute the thing locally, I don't get any changes in the I basically get conflicts, where like you have a column and a PGSQL variable, which are named the same. I don't get that locally, but I get that in the CI.
So are you saying the CI is detecting a problem that your local testing is not detecting?
Huh. Which, yeah.
Well, I think all what you could do is to download artifacts produced during continuous integration pipeline and locally compare outputs produced at continuous integration to the patterns stored together with tests which failed. There should be a report generated what failed exactly. Oh, yeah. I am looking right now at the results of your pipeline, and there is few failed tests. Well, there could be several reasons of failures. Maybe you didn't synchronize again whole HiveMind, or maybe you synchronize it improperly, for example, without using mock tests, which are prepared there and need quite special command line to spawn. Everything is coded in scripts used at continuous integration, and by using such scripts, you should not do anything special to reproduce very similar execution paths as in pipeline. So I hope you will be able to analyze errors and find problem if really something like this it is. Definitely, this is something related to your implementation. We have in the past some problems related to pipelines itself. Sometimes it was related to changing Python packages, but it was already fixed a few months ago by specifying exact versions of packages. And this way we are avoiding cases when package was upgraded in Python repository and by broken dependency, broken compatibility, some tests or some implemented functions are failing. So first I propose to get produced artifacts, compare differences, and of course, you also can run such tests locally and produce the same outputs. And I think you should get the same results, but maybe you just execute a synchronization locally, not API tests.
Yeah, it's likely. Well, initially I had another problem which was related to Postgres, the Postgres version, for which I proposed a fix where basically you can define in the function to directly resolve conflicts by selecting variables instead of, oh, maybe that's the issue. Selecting variables instead of using the column names. So yeah, maybe that's one of the reasons. But yeah, I'll look into it, and I don't think I should have too many issues with it. It's just something that I have going on right now with the where it takes a bit of time for me to re-execute a retest. But maybe I'll try to execute it locally.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you guys have like a maybe some documentation on how to execute everything locally? Because I'm assuming you're not using the pipeline every time, right?
You mean to get, what are you asking to get locally?
I mean, to execute the pipeline locally.
Actually, there is few scripts, and yes, probably there is documentation but I think best and simplest way to see how it should be spawned is just look into a GitLab CI YAML file,
Okay.
where it is simple encoded procedure of testing and spawning each part. So just look there. I will try to point you parts specific for executing tests, but really it is related to, for example, spawning file called start API smoke test, which is defined in our script subdirectory.
Okay, taking note of that. Thank you.
Most of things is implemented using scripts, just to be able to easy
Run it locally.
Yes, reproduce it locally.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Yeah. And yeah, I'm just trying to
just question. You are of course using Postgres 12.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I like the of course. Yeah, you guys are using 12.4, right? Because initially I was on 12.8.
I have no idea.
Yeah. Okay.
As far as, I mean, our only requirement
pipeline.
supposedly is 12. I would hope that running 12.8 would be fine. If 12.4 is what we're using, that I don't think using a newer version should likely cause a problem.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So as far as what we've been working on, I've been working on improving the peer-to-peer code with another guy here, and we've some of the improvements apply to both live sync and to just syncing, but a lot of the stuff we did is specific to syncing. So one of the things we noticed for a long time now is that syncing has was kind of slow, and it was significantly slower than just a replay, which, I mean, it should be slower than a replay in any event because a replay doesn't do signature checking, but it still seemed slower than it really should be. So we dove into that a little more in detail, and we found a bunch of different places where we could improve things. So the peer-to-peer code never really been optimized for speed originally, just because we kind of ran out of time for that part of the project. So we've gone in and pretty comprehensively improved its performance now. So in fact, now when you run a sync, the bottleneck is nothing to do with getting the data. It's all the blockchain's write processing thread is basically now the bottleneck. So syncing should be much faster. And like I said, live sync will also be improved because we fixed a well-known problem that when the code got moved from BitShares to Steam, the locking mechanism was screwed up, so that basically whenever the blockchain was processing transactions or blocks, it essentially froze up the peer-to-peer layer until it was done. So that problem is now fixed. That'll probably get merged in the next day or so, and then it's going to need to go through some we've been testing it manually, but the proper testing really needs a testing environment where we're running multiple nodes in parallel, communicating with each other, but off the production testnet, because we need to have all the nodes in the new net. To really test everything properly, we should test it where all the nodes are running the new code. So another thing that's been progress for now, which we've kind of got done, is the MirrorNet implementation. And there was recently some problem in that, but that's fixed now. So what the MirrorNet allows us to do is take data from the production net and basically simulate as if the same data is being fed into this mirror testnet. And so what I want to do is take that mirror testnet and use that to test the new peer-to-peer code, because that'll be a way that we can run all the nodes in the network with the new code, which we really can't do on the mainnet because we've got mainnets running normal nodes, of course. So that's the peer-to-peer stuff. Other stuff is being worked on. There's been a lot of work done on Dockerizing Half more efficiently. So I guess one of the driving factors for this is for continuous integration for testing. We want to be able to test. So right now, generally continuous integration always does like tests where we have 5 million blocks processed essentially. But going forward, I mean, we can also introduce mock data to test other new features without actually having it on the blockchain. So we've got the mock data to model new data. But what we don't have is a good way to just model performance issues related to having a lot of data. So, you know, a test with only 5 million points of data is definitely going to yield different performance results than our current blockchain at 60 million plus blocks. So we need a way to be able to rapidly have a system indexed to 60 million blocks that we can then do performance testing on for API calls to, say, HiveMind or other half applications. So that's what Bartek and company have been working on, is this ability to basically, the tests will actually like fill up a blockchain to the requested block number, say you want 50 million blocks, and then further tests, if they find a Dockerized image that already has the 50 million blocks, it could just reuse that one without having to waste all that time to redo it again, which obviously gets important because indexing to those kind of block numbers takes a while. Let's see what else. We've also been checking for and fixing bugs in Haffa. One of the things we've been doing in Haffa recently is moving all the Python stuff into what we call a direct SQL version that doesn't have any Python code. And in that case, the server for the Haffa is being provided by PostgreST instead. And so we've got one remaining bug, I think, as far as I know, in the direct SQL version that doesn't show up in the Python Haffa. So we're kind of waiting on that to get fixed. But once that's fixed, we'll do final benchmarks and be sure everything's meeting their speed requirements. Because right now we know of at least one API call that's strangely slow right now, and that needs to be analyzed still too. Let's see what else. We're rewriting Haffa's continuous integration system to use the Dockerized Half I mentioned. We've also got a guy working on converting HiveMind into a Half application now, so that work got started this week or last week, I suppose. And let's see what else. We're getting rid of the legacy account history implementation. This is the really old one. So we used to have on HiveD, we had 2 account history implementations, what we call the legacy one and then the RocksDB one. No one really used the legacy one anymore, and it was, with changes going on, it would have been a pain to keep maintaining it. So we've dropped the legacy implementation. So if you basically just request the account history plugin now, you're going to get the RocksDB one on your HiveD. And we've verified results of the account history plugin between the master version and the developed version that we've got now, because there were some changes to the RocksDB account history processing. And that was part of the work we did for Haffa. We made some improvements to the regular HiveD account history as well. So basically, we'll be left now with 2 account history systems. One that's the RocksDB that's built into HiveD, and alternatively the Half-based one, Haffa. I expect most people will wind up using the Haffa one, but if for some reason somebody wants needs a smaller system and doesn't plan on running a Half database, then they can still use the one that's in the RocksDB based one in HiveD. Let's see what else. We've been making improvements in tests for the wallet API. And this is essentially, by wallet API, I'm talking about the API for the wallet application, the command line wallet, the CLI wallet. So there's been various improvements there. And part of this has just been driven by better communications with Hive and avoiding as much work in the future, but also just we'd seen that whole wallet API hasn't really been touched in a long time and could use some improvements. So that's done as well. Let's see. Oh, we also started working on filtering of account history operations being fed to Hive. So this will allow Hive to have the same kind of filtering of data that we have on a regular account history plugin. So for instance, you can configure your account history plugin to only record data for your accounts or some set of accounts you're interested in. And we want the same ability in Hive so that a Hive application can potentially store less data and do that. And I guess, one more thing is I guess I forgot to mention, on the peer-to-peer stuff, we also fixed some issues we found. There wasn't a peer database being stored off anymore. This is another thing that got broke when the code moved from BitShares to Steam. So the node used to store off a list of peers that it had talked to recently. So if you shut down your node and then started it back up, it would go through a list all the peers it knew about and try to contact all of them. That got broke, and when that got broke, that forced us to always have seed nodes that were operational, so that we could hard code a set of nodes that the node could find. It could find first those seed nodes, and then it could find other nodes in the network. But that's always kind of been a point of centralization, that if those seed nodes went down, then basically a node wouldn't be able to sync up to wouldn't be able to find other peers in the network. So that peer database is now fixed. So that means that even if all the seed nodes go down, a node should be able to find peers if any of the peers it's talked to in the past that were not firewalled are still out there. I guess that's about it. I'm skipping over stuff, but that's a general digest, I guess, of what we've been working on. So I guess, Howell, are you there?
Yeah, so
Okay.
I'm just taking notes. Cool. I'm Watsi. Do you want to share as well, or should we continue?
I've been busy working on getting the landing page for Plug and Play. It's almost done. I'm hopeful that it will be live tomorrow, just polishing up a few things. On my Hive testnet, I'm running tests for a discussions feature that I plan to put on Plug and Play as well. And I'm also running tests and tests on the app that I'm developing. So that's pretty much all from my side.
Okay, cool. Anyone wants to share anything before we go on? I'm assuming not. Cool. So I know you briefly mentioned it, but so what kind of timeline are we looking at for the testnets for Half-Life 26? I know I have one of my developments that's still waiting to be merged. And apart from that, I don't really know what else is waiting to be closed in terms of features for us to close it. Like, I don't, like, for instance, the mirror testnet thingy.
Well, that mirror testnet that's not really a hard fork feature per se. It's more like testing. It's part of the testing environment.
Well,
but
yeah,
you mean when we launch the mirror
prerequisite.
testnet, I guess, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, I guess so.
So I'm hoping, I think, Gandalf, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're planning on launching the mirror testnet in the next couple of days, I think.
Ooh.
Yes, it's already finished conversion and the replay, and I just finished snapshot as we were on this meeting. So we are ready to deploy.
I'm glad to know you're working even as we're meeting. That's very efficient.
Yeah, because it's better not to say.
No time to lose.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, the test, it sounds like that should be in place probably maybe even today if we're lucky. So I want at least a month of testing time after we've stopped any real changes to the Hive code, which I've got one more thing I want to change in the is a protocol change in the peer-to-peer code, and I don't know how long it's going to take yet. I'm hoping we can do it in 2 weeks, but that may be aggressive. But I think somewhere in April we'll do the hard fork, but likely to be near the latter end of April, I think. Once we get this last change in, we'll announce a 1 month of testing time, and we'll notify the exchanges of the planned hard fork.
Okay, awesome. That was my thing. Yeah, basically this was a discussion, and Bartek already replied, but basically there is kind of an issue, quote unquote, with Hivemind and the way the API is set up right now, where there are two, when you call get posts or basically anything involving fetching posts, you can get two different booleans. One is grayed and another is muted. And basically the front end has to make up what they will of that. The issue that is that in the database, everything is tied from only one is muted boolean as a column. And then everything is kind of set dynamically depending on like the blacklist, the community state, which I'm working on. What else? I mean, the actual is muted thing from like a community mod reputation. And so basically, I'm probably going to propose a, I don't know, let's say an improvement proposal soon to standardize all of that, and maybe offering that as a either a muted true and then a muted reason, which is like an enum tied to it, or maybe just many booleans who explain like is muted, is muted community.
Let me get back to a basic question. So are we talking about changing the response of an existing API call right now, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So maybe what we should do is create a new API call, like a version 2 call essentially, so that we don't break existing stuff and apps could change in their own time if they want to use the new one.
What we could do, and would be simpler, would be instead of creating a new endpoint, would just adding new responses.
Optional parameter or something.
Yeah. That way it won't break anything, and then we can just add the new booleans. I just wanted to get you guys' input on.
Well, I mean, in general, obviously the stuff that's there that is grayed, is, it's been like that since we started, and it's always kind of sucked. I mean, we didn't change it because we would have broke a bunch of applications if we did so. If I'm certainly not opposed to improving that process. I would have done it if it, like I said, if it didn't broke anything. But I just want to be sure that when we do it in such a way that it's easy for the front ends to accept the change in their own time. Given the distributed nature of the work.
There is also, and
so there's one more thing, I guess, kind of related to this. There's two sort of conceptual ways that we can deal with this whole muting concept of information. So one is where the query just doesn't respond with the data at all, and the other where it responds with the data and it has information about why it's should be muted, for instance. So I don't know if do any of our things that we do right now actually filter the data at all, or do they all of the form where they just indicate that it's muted?
I think they all indicate, and it makes sense if we follow like the greater design philosophy of Hive as like censorship resistance, etc.
Well, I mean, this is a performance issue to me, not a censorship issue, because you can obviously get the data, but you might not want to get all the data if you're muting. Say somebody's been spamming the blockchain left and right, and we just want to cut down the amount of data that's responded to avoid the spam, then we might actually at that point actually want to actually mute the data from the response itself and not return it.
Yeah, I think we could. I mean, going back to the initial thing, we could also have a default where we don't return it, and then have an optional thing to like return all the data.
Yeah.
That way, most people. It's very similar to what we did for the synchronous calls and async, where if you really want it, you can still call the old and slower thing. But by default, you're going to be calling the new one, which is more efficient.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that just gets down to the subcategory of there's some things we'd always want. It's not just a clear-cut message of everything muted you'd either want or not. Just be aware, because there are some things that you'd want possibly still to see, maybe even, but just know that it's supposed to be showed specially, versus things you don't want to see at all. It may not be as complicated as it may be, not as simple as so you might want to mute if you had, say you had these reasons, for instance, that you're talking about. You might want to be able to mute, I mean, truly not get responses for some reasons but not others. Just, I don't know if that's going to be something we'll want to worry about, but it's just something I can see a use case where that could come up.
Yeah, fair. So yeah, there's that, and then mostly that also kind of, if we do like better filtering, that also implies that in the database, because I believe that right now with only one field, we are kind of limited in the amount of things we can do in SQL, and so maybe it would make more sense to expand that. But I'm afraid of the performance impact, because literally adding one more column means that column on every single on millions of posts. So I'm a bit worried about that. But that could work with is muted and then just a small int with like an enum containing like the reason.
Yeah, I think I think
but
that would
then
be fine.
What if it's muted for two different reasons?
Yep,
yeah,
that's why we had that's why there's
bits,
multiple flags right now, is for mutings for multiple reasons, in fact.
Yeah.
You'll need to think about this a little as all it counts to. It's not a simple. It's not super simple. It's not super hard, but it's not super simple either.
I feel I could just do bitwise operations, and in order to reach
I think that's kind of
that's probably the
good, reasonable solution. Yeah, but we don't expect that many reasons for muting to begin with, so you could certainly fit them, I think, in a bitwise field of 64 bits or whatever.
64 bits would be plenty, I think. I mean, I doubt we'll reach more than 100 reasons, and that would be a lot.
Yeah, I'm thinking we probably won't reach more than 10, but
but yeah, okay. Do you guys have anything else? I pretty much have answers to everything.
I don't.
Else.
Any questions or anything? Archange?
That's usually his time to shine.
Actually, maybe he could comment on, if he's around, he could comment. I saw him online. He could comment on how things are going with Hive Authority stuff.
Oh, maybe not.
Maybe he's got a mic problem.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had issue with my mic. So, what do you want me to talk about?
I was just asking how the Hive Authority stuff was working. Everything working well?
Oh, it's working quite well. We had some minor issues at the very beginning, but no, it will be. So in 1 week, yes, in 1 week it will be running for 1 month, 1 full month, and I see more and more people using it. So it's good stuff. What we need to do now is promoting the Hive Vault, so more apps use it. But
so right now we've got, I guess,
get negative feedback. That's very, very good.
That's good. Yeah, that's always a good start.
Yeah.
So we've got PeakD uses it, and Hive blog has it. Is eCincy have it as well?
Dbus, my apps are using it. I know that Stuttgart still needs to implement a few things for Splinterlands.
Okay.
So it's going slowly but safely.
Sounds good.
My main goal, yeah.
Okay, anyone else? I guess not.
Okay, cool. Have a nice week, everyone, and see you on the testnet, I guess.
Thanks. See ya.
See you around. Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
See you. Thank you.